What's up, XDefiant fans? It is Preach as always. So, in my launch video, I went over a few of my settings, but that video wasn't titled in a way that let people know that information was in there. And I have been asked for it in quite a few comments over my recent videos. So, today I want to give you a quick rundown of what the best options you can choose for your graphics, controller, movement, and performance settings are. But before we jump into that, if you guys like this video, you already know what to do. Smash that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and turn those bell notifications on if you want to know every time I post a new video. So, to kick things off today, we're going to take a look at a tweet by the lead developer of XDefiant, Mr. Mark Rubin himself. Mr. Rubin said, "Quick PSA, VSync is the devil. Turn it off. If it were up to me, I'd kill that setting with fire. It can cause a lot of latency feel in the game. PSA number two, turn on 120 hertz mode on console if you can. Makes a huge difference." So here we have the actual lead developer on the game telling us some settings that will drastically impact our in-game performance. So let's dig a little deeper into these two things. The first one only relates to PC players, and that is the VSync setting. VSync is a setting where your graphics card tries its best to match the refresh rate of the screen in such a perfect way as to prevent any screen tearing. This is really nice in more cinematic story driven games, but this does create a bit of input latency because instead of trying to make your actions happen immediately, it is trying to time your actions with the refresh rate of the screen. You can really feel this if you play with the setting on versus playing with it off. In a competitive game where every single millisecond counts, it is better to deal with a small potential for some screen tearing than it is to have your inputs register later than you make the action. The second one of these only relates to console, and that is turning on your 120 hertz option instead of playing on 60 hertz. This will make everything feel quicker and snappier, but there is a little more to this setting than the tweet has room to explain. You must be playing on a monitor that is capable of at least 120 hertz, or turning the setting on is just going to be pointless. You must also turn on the 120 hertz setting within your console graphics settings, not just within the XDefiant settings menu. Since the tweet is addressing performance settings, we're going to stay on that topic and tie some of our key graphics settings in as well. And most of this will apply to PC players. So if you're a console player, you can jump ahead to the controller and movement portions of this video if you would like. One of the most important settings for pure performance is to run the game in full screen only mode. Now, because I am multitasking with recording and I do not have room for my second monitor, I am running in full screen windowed. But you do get better performance and less latency out of the game by being purely in full screen mode. Next, you're going to want to run the game in the native resolution of your monitor for best performance and graphics combination. Mine is 1920 by 1080, and my screen has a 240 hertz refresh rate. If your graphics card will allow you to max out your refresh rate while playing at a graphics level that you are happy with, then I highly recommend doing so. A little tip that has always worked well for me, though, for ensuring you have minimal stuttering and frame dips, is to play a game or two and watch your FPS counter in the corner, which it is a good idea to turn on in your settings and see about where it averages, and then set your max frames to just below that average. So if, let's say, it's averaging 180, set your max frames to 170. You'll always be sitting at the high end of your max and have very few frame drops, if any at all. Another key feature that you want to keep turned off is triple buffering. It is designed to help out a small amount with frame rate, but it seems to add a lot of input latency, which, as we have discussed heavily, is a big no no in competitive style games. I'm not going to touch on my specific graphics settings because everyone's PC is different, and yours is likely better than mine since I am on a laptop, but those can be tweaked to your liking. I will say that shadow settings impact graphics cards, while turning them down has minimal impact on the game itself. So, those would be where I would start making things lower if you need to make any changes at all. Now, let's talk controller. I'm playing on a PS5 DualSense Edge controller utilizing the two back paddles, but they aren't necessary at all. I play on the brawler setting, which simply swaps the inputs of the circle or B if you use an Xbox controller to that of pushing in the right stick, making the stick your crouch or slide, whilst making the circle or B your melee. To me, this is one of the most important settings in the world because it allows you to keep your thumb on your aiming input while sliding as opposed to having to reach away to hit the circle or B button. If you do not have a pro controller that has trigger stops and you want to be able to have a short button press and button reset for your in game trigger, I recommend playing flipped, as this makes your ADS and fire buttons the bumpers instead of the triggers, giving a shorter pull and reset, allowing you to be faster. And play with aim assist on. If you turn it off, you are literally just hindering yourself. For your aim response curve, the reverse S curve is like playing on dynamic in Call of Duty and is what most serious players are using. However, standard feels fine as well, but reverse S curve does feel better in my personal opinion. Sensitivity is a personal preference, and since I primarily snipe, my sensitivity setting is going to vary drastically from most players. But the big tip I can give there is to set it and leave it. Don't keep messing with it, or you will never get comfortable with the game. Now, dead zones are important, and your controller plays a big factor here. Instead of giving you actual numbers, my advice is to take each stick as low as you can take it without creating stick drift. This is different for every controller. I have one controller that can go all the way down to 3, while the other one needs to be around 7. So test this out with your controller. Just sit still in game and see if your character walks or your aim moves around. And if it does, then raise the dead zone until everything sits still on its own. Now, these movement settings tie into the controller settings, and these are my personal preferences. I prefer to play with tap to slide and not hold because I want that movement to be as instantaneous as possible. Aiming interrupts reload being turned on can save your life. If you start to reload before you are completely empty and someone catches you by surprise, you can aim in and shoot the remaining bullets in the original magazine instead of finishing your reload. To me, auto sprint is dependent on how much of a movement based player you are. If you like to dip and dodge and get in and out of engagements quickly, auto sprint is going to save your thumb's life, as you won't be constantly mashing the sprint button. However, if you're a more methodical player, auto sprint may get you caught running when you're trying to move a little slower. So use this setting at your own discretion. The last setting I want to touch on is mini map rotation. You want this set to off, which seems backwards to me for how it actually works. When set to off, your mini map will work like Call of Duty, where you're always facing forward on the map and the map rotates around you. So what is in front of you is always at the top of the map. To me, this is the most intuitive way to use the map because you don't have to look at the direction of your own arrow. When turned on, which again seems backwards, the map stays in one direction and your player rotates within the map. So to know what is in front of you, you have to pay close attention to what direction the arrow is actually facing. This is not as intuitive in my personal opinion. This wraps up this video, as these are the key settings I would focus on. And as soon as we get the practice zone available, I will be making a tips and tricks video. But until then, if you liked this video or if it was at all helpful, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new here, and turn those bell notifications on if you want to know every time I post a new video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Preach out.